Hi, Paul. Should we get started?
Yes.
Good to see you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for time. Sorry, I had some technical difficulties. So yeah, today we're talking about pricing tools from Excel to SaaS. And before we start, I just want to give a quick intro of who we are at Binomics. Ingo, if you want to do the next slide exactly. Our founder, Dr. Ingo Reinhardt, will be speaking mostly today, and I will be moderating the session. Ingo has 12 years of experience in pricing, revenue management, and also developed the Binomics methods, which he will show you guys today in this quick webinar. And I'm Paul, I'm head of sales at Binomics and also leading the Binomics content and insights. On the next slide, yeah, just a quick summary of what we do. Binomics is a cloud software empowering you to make better pricing and revenue management decisions. And our approach here is really unique with the virtual customer method. It's more holistic, more accurate, and faster. And we'll see that a little bit in this webinar as well. And maybe lastly, before we start with the content, Ingo, if you want to ask any questions, please use the comment function. Any questions directly to the hosts, use the Q&A. And if you want to rewatch the webinar, you will also get access to the recording afterwards. So check your inbox for that next week. So yeah, with no further ado, Ingo, let's talk a little bit about pricing tools from Excel to SaaS.
Perfect. Thanks, Paul, for the intro. Yeah, and let's jump right into it. If you have any question, just as Paul said, put them in the comments. We'll go through all of them and hope we can answer everything you have. We hope for obviously for a lively discussion. And to kick it off, let's start, because today's topic is pricing tools. We want to share a little bit about the content, and I think it makes sense that we do it from our own perspective, think where we feel the landscape is moving towards, what the main challenges are, and so on. And to kick it off, we wanted to start with an example that probably many of you already know. It's from our Halloween webinar, which we have, where we talk about pricing horror stories, and one of them, I think it's one of the more famous one, has to do with tool use and pricing algorithms that are left to themselves, and I think it's probably one of the more prominent examples of that type. And it's on a book, The Making of a Fly, probably a very little known biology book that was sold on Amazon. And the particular thing is that there were two competitors who had the idea that they were applying competitive pricing, in the sense that they looked at each other's price and they tended to overbid each other, in the sense that they always went up step by step in their pricing above the others. And what happened after they did that for a while was that they ended up with prices of, as you can see here on the left side, of $18 million or $23-24 million in the other case. So they tended to go above each other in their pricing. And this is just one example. I don't think anyone bought the book at that price. That shows that pricing tools, algorithms, when they're left to themselves, can be very dangerous and yeah, lead to obviously non-optimal outcomes. And this is, I think, an important reminder. And whenever you use tools, it's important to make sure that things like that don't happen. This can be done, for example, with having like boundaries where prices can go, which is a very rough measure, or I'll show that in the case of our tool, if we have time, a more natural way to avoid these types of problems. But I think it's an important reminder. If you want to see more such examples, you can join our webinar on pricing horror stories. I think it's at the end of this month, and also we did a number of these examples already last year. So, but let's go into the topic. And of course, pricing is, I would say, at least as old as money. So since the beginning of civilization, people have been working on pricing, understanding how much to charge for their products. They have applied different methods, different tools, and I think we added here the key steps in the evolution of tools that have been used for pricing. And I think we're currently, as we will argue, are mostly in a world that's still largely Excel based, but is now moving towards more advanced tools that are SaaS typically, and run in the browser. If you're interested in that, and also in our particular view, we have a white paper, The Evolution of Pricing, and we can put that in the show notes. I think it also explains what we think is the particular next step moving from an Excel-based logic to a SaaS-based logic, and we'll also touch on that in this webinar here. All right, so what are the typical applications for which pricing tools are being used? I think in our view, happy if you see it differently, put it in the notes and we'll discuss in the end. But there are typically three areas. The first one is the collection of data. So there are different tools that collect, for example, sales data, that collect competitor prices and competitor information using different scraping methods, for example, or using other methods. Like there's a whole range of methods, tools available to essentially collect data on competitor prices, collect data on something like elasticity, or the data that produces price elasticities, data on willingness to pay and other things. Then there's, and to us, this is the most difficult, but also most important part, the area of price and product optimization. And this essentially answers the question of what are the right prices for my products, what portfolio should I have, so what type of product should I have if I can choose between different variations. For example, if I have if I'm, for example, selling cereals, I can choose different flavors, different packaging, different sizes, and so on. If I sell a mobile plan, I have different data volumes in these plans. These are decisions I can take, and I can do this by hand with Excel, or I can do this also with a tool, a pricing solution, for example. And typically these apply different methods, and the most important or widely used ones are price elasticity-based pricing, something like competitor pricing, where you look what your competitors do and position yourself in some way. Something like a cost-plus pricing is still very common, where you look at what are your costs and you put a markup on these. Or you have something like a value-based pricing, where you look at what's the value of certain product or certain product features to your customers, and then you build the price based on these values to the customers. And typically, if you do all of these, you will see that you get very different results, and then you typically have the challenge on top of how to combine these different methods. And what I've actually seen a lot previously as a consultant is that many people just take an average of different methods, and there are, of course, some challenges that go along with it. The third area of pricing tools that are being covered is the management of prices. For example, if you're a retailer with thousands of products, it's a challenge to manage your prices. If your purchasing costs differ or change over time, to update your prices in an efficient way when you can't look at each price individually, but need to have an efficient method to steer your prices. With the ski jacket example that I hope you can see here on the slide, is if you have different value drivers, different fillings, for example, different features, different colors, and so on, you need to have some sort of logic how to price these different products to maintain a pricing logic system, some pack price architecture, for example, to be consistent and to change prices, for example, after your costs have increased. And another application is that, for example, if you're in B2B, where you have a very large set of different customer types, customers coming from different industries, having different sizes, different order values, and so on, different needs, you typically have the need to apply some sort of structured and systematic pricing. And this is often handled with pricing tools that ensure that there's a logic, but often these tools don't make sure that the individual prices are correct. They're consistent, but they're not necessarily correct. So from our understanding is that the first one, the collection of data and the management of prices and offers, these are, from what we see, what most tools focus on. These are important contributions, but they tend to be a bit easier. And I think the biggest prize and the most challenging part is the optimization, and this is what we spend most of our time on optimizing. So let's look at what's been applied in the field. And we already mentioned previously that we're going from Excel to more SaaS solutions. I think that's the general narrative. But when we did a survey earlier this year across different industries, we asked pricing managers what they use, and we still got the answer that was at 17 out of 20 answered that they're still mostly working with Excel. So there are already some working with different types of solutions, rule-based software, for example, and some with AI or machine learning software, where we would also see ourselves. These are still the exceptions. Rule-based software is something like what we mentioned on the previous slide here, where you have a logic. We say, okay, if it's down filling, it's plus 50 euros compared to the synthetic filling. So this is the world we're living in. So most, and I'm interested in understanding how you work, of course, where still most are working with an Excel environment. And the challenge is that we are currently living in a very data-rich world. Some of that's also been provided by the tools that we mentioned 2 slides ago, that you have certain tools that collect data on a very broad level. And then the question is always, how do you integrate all of these information, how to use product data, sales data, customer insights, and so on, and put them in a single solution. And we often see, and probably many of you are familiar with something like that, you put them, when you work with Excel, into something like this, and this is just strongly simplified as an example, but I think it highlights how many in the field still work with pricing. So we have a very simple example. So we're selling with our own brand peanuts at different sizes, ranging from 250 grams to 1,000 grams. And we have 2 competitors, A and B, who also sell nuts in different weights at different prices. We know our current prices, we know our costs. And through some method, we have collected price elasticities, and a bit simplified, but the example is based on a real example. We found that price elasticities are -2 in this case. And what we know, if we optimize prices using price elasticities, that the price list in the optimum, we always have price elasticity times margin is -1. So if the price elasticity is -2, then the optimal margin should be 50%. And that leads to these prices. So we should increase from 16.99 to 18 euros. Can think about the price threshold here, but essentially these would be the profit optimal prices if you are looking for elasticity-based pricing. So, and if you do that, and if that actually is correct, then you see that you will have an increase in your profit going here to 46,000 euros. If you do something else, I already mentioned it, that it's often not very straightforward to look at these different to apply these different methods together. If you would do this in Excel and you have something like a value-based pricing where you have a base price for your products, here let's say it's 6 euros, different typically regression-based methods are available to produce these numbers. And then you have for all of your different brand value drivers, in this case it's brand and size, you have you have these value drivers and attributes, and so for your products, they all have the same brand, they have different sizes, and then you get these optimal prices. You can also do this, of course, for your competitor, but obviously you don't steer the prices of your competitor, but you could look at your competitor prices in this way as well. And if you apply this, you typically get different prices, as I mentioned before, from the prices you get with the price elasticity. And when you then combine these, let's say you're uncertain which one is better, and you just take essentially the average and then adjust to get to the nearest price threshold, then you would find that these here are your optimal prices. And the question, of course, is how good is this actually? And of course, there are some advantages and disadvantages with such an Excel solution. I think the obvious ones, and if you only give someone 30 minutes, most will go for an Excel solution if they don't have anything at hand, is of course cheap, it's flexible, everyone knows more or less how to use Excel, so you get to an answer fast. But typically, when you have large data sets, Excel is not properly integrated into other solutions, into other data sources. It's really difficult to scale it. If you're looking at a large portfolio, you will not be able to manage it all within Excel. It's really difficult to work across teams with Excel, where different people have access to the tool. And from our point of view, the largest challenge is the fact that it's really difficult to have proper modeling within Excel. So you can do something like this elasticity-based pricing. You can do something like the simple value-based pricing that I showed, but it's really difficult to get to a realistic modeling where you also consider, for example, cross effects between different products. And this is actually where modern SaaS solutions can be of much use, or are really the next step in being able to integrate these different data sources to offer a solution or a pricing method that really takes account of the behavior of real people. And won't go into too much detail here today, but just to highlight a way in which we are working with our SaaS solution to make this actually possible, to integrate these different data sources and to result then in a solution that's capable of replicating the real real demand reaction that you would see if you make these price changes that we showed in this simple example. And as I said, I won't go into too much detail, but just briefly, our solution is based on what we call the virtual customer or virtual shopper technology. And essentially we create, based on these different data sources, a very large number of virtual shoppers that collectively behave like real shoppers, and you can show them your offer. So here you have to show them 3 different products. In this case, there are different mobile plans, and you show them the offer, and depending on the preferences of these people that were derived from different data sources, they will make a decision what they would buy. So the pink ones here will buy product 1, the blue ones product 2, the green ones product 3. And if you then change prices, for example, some of them will switch to a different product, some will not buy anything at all anymore. And overall, this replicates very closely the behavior of real people in a market. So if you have it and set up using the available data, then you typically have a very precise model of reality, and that helps you optimize your pricing properly. And I just want to show very quickly what this can look like. Paul, and please tell me if once you see it.
Yeah, I see your desktop. Just have to pull up the window.
And do you see the browser?
Yes, now we can see it.
Perfect. All right, so what I did is I put the 7 products we had in the example here into the tool. So we have our 4 different brands. We have our 3 competitor brands, and we have the different features. So today we'll only be looking at different prices. but you could also change, for example, the size of these products. You can change your trade terms, see what happens, change costs. You can change everything that's relevant. So, and you set up the offer, and of course, you can also do this automatically at a much larger scale, and then you can see what happens if you show that to your customers. And as we had previously in the Excel example, we have the status quo, our own 4 products, competitor products, and the units that people would buy at these different prices. And if you then look at price changes, so you increase the price of this first product by 20 cents, you see that you lose some units. And as I mentioned before, with a solution like this that replicates real customer behavior, it's really easy to model these interdependencies between products. If you increase the price of just one product in your portfolio, some will go to your other products. And in this case, also some will go to a competitor product. You see, if you only change the price of one product, you have a rather high elasticity. If you also change the price of another product, you immediately see that the elasticity is going down. And if you do that and you have realistic price changes, you'll see that it's already getting close to the -2 we were using in the Excel example. But it's also an important reminder that in reality, price elasticities are never constant. So they change depending on the magnitude of the price change, and they change depending on what other things are going on in the market. So in this case, here, this product actually has a positive price elasticity, 4.8, because it gains more from this product than it loses from its own price increase. So these interdependencies are super important. Based on our work, we see that it's about half of the variation in volumes in an industry comes from the interaction between products. And if you just work with a simple elasticity model, or if you use a SaaS solution, for example, that only works with elasticities and doesn't use the potential that's available with these technologies now, then your understanding of how the market reacts to these changes is very limited in many cases. So what you can do here, and looking at the time, I think you should go back to the presentation. You can, of course, very easily look at the optimum price in this case and have an understanding of, so for example, first use the technology to get the profit optimum, and also have an understanding of the interdependencies between these different products. And if we then go back to the presentation for comparison, well, can you see the PowerPoint again?
Yes.
Perfect. So if we, and I was just comparing what we did with the Excel forecast. In this case, it's just the forecast based on the price elasticity model, because a value-based model doesn't really have a forecast in how the demand reacts to the prices that are being derived by the value-based pricing. You see that the prediction that came from the model, and it's anonymized what we're showing here, but it's based on a real example. So it's based on a real example where we A/B tested in different cases the different pricing predictions and compared them with each other. So you see that these elasticity models, this of course is just one case, but it's a good example of many things that we're seeing. They're typically very off from what really happens in the market. So the volume reaction is very off, the profit reaction is very off, whereas here the case that came from our simulation using real customer behavior was much more precise, and also allowed the team here to make a much better and more profitable recommendation, or a much more profitable price change than they would have done using traditional methods. And just to summarize, I think these are the moving forward, and then we'll go to the discussion. These are the important steps or things that a SaaS solution really can offer compared to an Excel solution. And I think from our point of view, and this is also where we are really happy that we found this virtual shopper technology that we developed, it really allows the user to take the full advantages of large data that has now become available, and also machine learning technologies that help the user really exploit this data and give them a method that's rich enough to replicate real behavior. So I think those are the key advantages of moving from an Excel-based pricing to a SaaS-based pricing. There are, of course, many more. We put them here on the slide, and I think we'll share the slides afterwards. But I think from our point of view is that the SaaS solutions, and I hope I could give you an understanding, like a first insight into that, is really the great advantage and the important next step as we move from an Excel-based simplistic pricing environment to a SaaS, richer SaaS and realistic modeling environment that we highlighted here. Paul?
Great. Yeah, we already have some questions in the chat and Q&A. Feel free to add to them if you have more. The first question was if we can get access to previous events as well. And I already answered in the chat with the link to our website. So you can find all of our webinars on the website or YouTube channel. So feel free to check it out if you find that interesting. Another person asked, can you explain what a virtual shopper is? A real human being, a little like a conjoint analysis online with a real sample of possible interested people? If so, how big is the sample? I think it'd be great if you can just kind of summarize that.
Yeah, so
once more.
So just really a rough summary, and I think maybe we can also add some links later on in to show where we go into more detail. So it's the idea of the virtual shopper is that it essentially is it's a statistical model of behavior, and they have preferences similar to what you know from a conjoint analysis, for example, where you take individual participants and convert them into their utilities and so on. With the virtual shopper is what we can do is we can do pretty much the same. We can use conjoint data, but also other data like transaction data, other survey data, and so on. And it produces for each one of these virtual shoppers essentially a list of preferences for different attributes within value drivers, and they can also have behaviors. So they some are susceptible to price thresholds, others are not, like real people. Some prefer like a middle option in a good, better, best offer, and so on. So they have both utilities for different attributes, and they can have certain behaviors, and together they make decisions like real people between products. And the important thing is we're not claiming that an individual virtual shopper exists in reality, but a group of virtual shopper behaves collectively like a group of real shoppers. And that's why together they can make a very good prediction given a certain offer, what people would buy.
Perfect. I also added your recent white paper in the chat, Ingo. I think that also explains it quite nicely. And if you want to learn more, I also shared my calendar link. So if you want to dive deeper into it, happy to spend some time doing that. Someone also asked, can you factor likely reactions from competition as well? So can just speak to that.
Yeah, so competitors are a bit more difficult because it really depends on what individual teams decide. What's possible is that competitors have like an historical behavior. Some just increase 2% each year. Some always follow a certain brand in a market and so on. So there's the historical behavior. And of course, what we see is that's the one ingredient, and the other one is the market understanding of people working with the tool. So the tool doesn't provide like a prediction of what a competitor will do, but you can look at different scenarios. You can, as I said, look at the historical behavior of certain groups, and work with that to derive proper scenarios here.
Sounds good. Someone asked again if we can send the session via email, and yes, you will get that email early next week, the latest. And someone also asked, from a retailer perspective, have you seen examples on pricing approach, pricing differentiation through different roles of products? So for instance, products that drive traffic through lower price promotions, or to make margin, for instance, to be added to the basket at a higher price or higher profit. So can you speak to that?
Yeah, so we, of course, this is how retailers work, and different categories have different roles to play from a retailer. Currently, we're mostly focusing in consumer goods on the manufacturers, on their perspective, but you can also include such strategies. And essentially, what they do is they add limitations to price ranges, product ranges, and so on that are available in the tool. And then, of course, you have to work within these boundaries to find your optimum, given that you are in a certain category, and that might fulfill a certain role for the retailer. Yeah. What we haven't done is because that would be a next step, is to optimize from a retailer point of view, so to understand how strong are these effects. So how strong are the focus categories actually driving traffic, and how cheap do they have to be, and how that affects all of the other categories where they want to make a profit in the end. So optimizing the whole store from a retailer perspective is one layer more complex, and this is something we'll tackle in one of the next iterations.
Perfect. Ingo, maybe if you can go to the last slide. I just want to show the audience what we have in store next week, or sorry, the next webinar. I'm posting the link to register already in the chat, but you can also register in our follow-up email. If you're interested in pricing and revenue management strategies amid challenging times, which we all know what they cover. And that will be in 2 weeks. So register now on Zoom, or when you receive our email next week. So yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Thanks for the engaging discussion today. And if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email. You find my meeting link in the chat. I can also add it to our follow-up email, or you can find it on the website. So have a great day and a good weekend.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
thanks everyone, and hope to see you next time. Bye.